Brr. She pretended to be a boy for 4 years to avoid being claimed until the Alpha King found out. The sun hung low in the sky, spilling golden light over the village of Ashen Hollow. Its wooden homes clustered around the cobblestone square seemed ordinary to the untrained eye. Brr. But within the quiet streets and the busy market stalls, secrets whispered in every shadow. Among those secrets walked Elara, or rather, Elerin, as she had been known for 4 long years. To the villagers, Erlin was a boy. A strong, clever boy who worked in the stables, tended the horses, and had an uncanny talent with a sword. To herself, she was a young woman hiding in plain sight, a life built on careful observation, practiced movements, and constant vigilance. Brr. She had learned to speak in the low, clipped tones of boys, to hide the softness of her features under dirt and sweat, and to carry herself with the confidence of someone far older than her 17 years. Elara had chosen this life for one reason: survival. The Alpha King of their lands, Kaelin, was feared for his power and ruthlessness. He claimed women from noble houses, and even the common folk lived in terror of his roaming patrols. Elara had escaped his notice once, but she knew that one slip, one accidental glance from the wrong person, could destroy her carefully maintained disguise and her life. She brushed a hand over a horse's mane, exchanged nods with the blacksmith, and laughed easily with a group of boys who were none the wiser. Every motion, every word, was measured. Every thought was a question. Will today be the day he comes? Will my secret be exposed? She had almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen for who she truly was. The fear was a constant shadow, a weight in her chest that tightened whenever she laughed too loud, lingered too long in conversation, or allowed herself a moment of carelessness. He had learned to love the wind on her face, the feel of the reins in her hands, and the solitude of the stables, but she had never learned to love anyone else. Not properly, not fully. There was no room for that in a life built on lies. But then the rumors began. A messenger had arrived from the king's palace a week ago, speaking in hushed tones to the village elders. A young warrior had been spotted near the borderlands, a boy of unusual skill, unmatched courage, and strange determination. He fights like a man of 20, yet moves with the speed of a shadow, the messenger had said. Villagers exchanged nervous glances, but Elara felt her pulse quicken. She knew immediately the story was about her. She had always been careful to avoid attention, but apparently, whispers had a way of following even the quietest souls. Now, as she led a horse out of the stable, she noticed a figure in the distance, standing at the edge of the village. His cloak was dark, edged with the insignia of the royal house. The sun glinted off the silver clasp at his shoulder, and his presence seemed to shift the air around him. Even from afar she felt it, a pull she could not name, a force that pressed against her heart like a tide. Kaelin. Her breath caught. She had only seen him once before, at the far edge of the kingdom when her village had sent a delegation to the royal city. His reputation had preceded him. The Alpha King, whose gaze could pierce stone, whose voice could command storms, whose presence alone reminded the world who ruled. And yet, despite everything, there was something almost human in the way he moved. A weight of loneliness beneath the armor of authority, a vulnerability hidden behind the sharp lines of his jaw and the cold steel of his eyes. Elara felt a strange mix of fear and fascination. She forced herself to breathe steadily, to keep the reins firm in her hands, and to remind herself of the truth. She could not afford to be noticed. Not now. Not ever. Kaelin's eyes, however, were already searching. He did not approach immediately. Instead, he walked the village's perimeter, slow and deliberate, as if studying every detail. Every glance he cast seemed to weigh her very existence. Alara ducked behind a stack of hay bales, heart hammering in her chest. She had always been quick, but never had she felt the need to hide from a single person so strongly. And yet she could not turn away. Desperation. Her eyes followed him, tracing the sweep of his cloak, the strength in his stride, the silent command he carried like a shadow around him.
"You've grown bold, Ellerin," a voice whispered behind her.
She spun around, hand on her dagger, only to find Tamas, a boy from the village, smirking. He had been her friend since childhood, though he had no inkling of her secret. "Careful," he said, nudging her shoulder. "The Alpha doesn't come to Ashen Hollow often, but when he does, well, you know the stories."
Elara swallowed, forcing a laugh that felt like a knife in her throat.
"I'm careful," she said, brushing straw from her tunic. "More careful than anyone else." But even as she spoke, she knew it was a lie. Kaelin's presence changed everything. Every step, every breath felt like a challenge. And somewhere deep inside, a part of her long-hidden heart responded, not with fear alone, but with something else: curiosity. The day passed in a blur of chores and careful observation. Every time she glanced toward the edge of the village, Kaelin remained there, a silent sentinel, studying, waiting. The villagers spoke in hushed tones, aware of the tension but unwilling to name it. And all the while, Elara felt the walls she had built around herself begin to tremble. Even in the evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant mountains, Kaelin did not leave. He moved closer, his shadow stretching across the square, his presence a quiet storm. And then, without a word, he spoke. "Elrin!" he said, his voice low and calm, carrying the weight of authority and something softer, something that made her stomach twist with confusion. "Come with me!" She wanted to flee, to disappear into the shadows where she belonged. And yet, something in the tone of his command was not cruelty. It was expectation, curiosity, a test. And tests were dangerous, yes, but they also offered a strange thrill. "I cannot," she stammered, gripping the reins of the horse as if it could anchor her to reality. Kaelin's gaze softened, ever so slightly, though the power behind it remained unyielding.
"I do not ask lightly. You have skill."
"But there is more to you than the village allows." "I can see it." Every word he spoke threatened to unravel the careful disguise she had maintained for 4 years. To be seen, truly seen, by the Alpha King was unthinkable.
Yet a part of her long-repressed soul ached to be recognized, to have her abilities acknowledged without the lie of her identity. Before she could answer, a distant cry split the evening air.
Smoke rose from the edge of the village. Shadows moved with unnatural speed, shapes darker than night itself, twisting and writhing. Panic erupted. Villagers shouted, children cried, and the peaceful illusion of Ashen Hollow shattered in an instant. Kaelin moved with lightning speed, drawing his sword as the shadows advanced.
Elara felt her blood freeze and her instincts sharpen. She had trained for moments like this, though never expecting to face them alongside the Alpha King himself.
In a heartbeat, she dismounted, unsheathing her blade. Her movements were precise, fluid, a dance born of fear and necessity. She could hear Kaelin behind her, commanding, strategizing, his presence both terrifying and strangely comforting. And then their eyes met, hers wide with fear and resolve, his intense and calculating, yet not without a flicker of admiration. In that moment, the carefully constructed barrier between them wavered, and something unspoken passed. Recognition, not of her secret, yet, but of the courage that had kept her alive. The shadows lunged closer, and Elara stepped forward, ready to defend her village. Her heart pounded, not just with fear, but with an unfamiliar thrill. The thrill of being seen, tested, and perhaps valued. But even as she fought, she knew the truth. The moment Kaelin discovered who she really was, nothing would ever be the same. And somewhere deep in the tumult of battle, she realized that she had been pretending for far too long. Perhaps the world, or at least the Alpha King, was ready to see the real Elara. The smoke curled upward, the shadows pressed closer, and Kaelin's voice rang in her ears. "Hold steady, Elaran! This night is only the beginning." And in that single sentence, the world shifted. The village of Ashen Hollow lay in ruins by dawn. Smoke still spiraled from the burned-out edges of the market, and the air was heavy with ash and the scent of scorched wood.
Villagers huddled together, shaken but alive, and the true extent of the attack was slowly becoming clear. The shadows had vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving behind whispers of fear and awe.
And Elara wiped sweat and grime from her face, her hands trembling slightly as she surveyed the damage. Her horse, calm and faithful, nudged her shoulder. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Kaelin was nowhere to be seen. That thought should have terrified her, but it didn't. For strange as it was, she felt a flicker of relief, mixed with disappointment. She wanted to know why he had come, why he had watched her fight, and, if she dared admit it, what he thought of her. Her contemplation was interrupted by the sound of hoofbeats on the dirt road. Kaelin had returned, mounted, his black cloak billowing behind him. The sun had risen, but it did not touch him warmly. His presence alone seemed to cast a shadow over the broken village. "Elara," he said, dismounting with fluid grace, "you fought well." His voice carried the weight of command, but also something softer, almost unspoken. "Better than I expected." Elara's hands tightened around her sword. "I only did what I had to." "I protected the village!" Her voice was firm, though her heart raced. Every word could be a mistake. She had trained for danger, but not for the intensity of Kaelin's gaze. He studied her silently for a long moment, the wind lifting strands of her dark hair from her face. "You lie well," he said finally. "But there is more to you than you allow the world to see." Her stomach twisted. Was this a warning? An accusation? Or something else entirely? She forced herself to speak, to hide her fear beneath practiced calm. "I am what I appear to be. I am a boy who defends his village." Kaelin's lips quirked, almost imperceptibly, into the faintest of smiles.
"You hide too well," he said.
And yet, you leave traces, small pieces of yourself behind, even in battle.
Elara felt her cheeks flush. He was probing her, testing her, not with weapons, but with words.
She wanted to retreat, to vanish into the shadows where her secret had always been safe. But part of her, a reckless, daring part, wanted to meet his gaze and see if he could truly see her, beyond the mask she had worn for 4 long years. "Come with me. There are questions only you can answer and a journey that cannot wait." Her instincts screamed that it was dangerous. Her secret was still intact, fragile as a glass figurine. And yet, the pull she felt toward him was undeniable. Something in his voice, in the way he watched her, promised that this journey might change everything. She nodded. "Lead the way." They walked through the remnants of the village, and Kaelin's attention did not waver. Every glance seemed to assess, every movement weighed. and Elara found herself both terrified and exhilarated. It was as if he could read the hidden corners of her mind, the unspoken thoughts she had kept locked away from everyone else. "You are clever," Kalen said after a long silence. "Not just in battle, but in understanding people." Inspiration. That is a rare gift.
I have had to be, she replied.
Verse. I've learned to survive. Kalen nodded, his eyes darkening. Survival alone is not enough.
Strength without direction becomes a weapon against itself. Clay and she frowned, unsure what he meant, but she said nothing. Kalen's words always seemed layered, a puzzle she was not yet ready to solve. As they neared the edge of the village, Kalen stopped and turned to her. His eyes were sharp, unyielding, but not without warmth. "Tell me, Ilarin, have you ever wanted something more than safety?" Elara blinked.
The question cut through her carefully constructed armor. For a long moment she did not answer.
To want more was dangerous. To admit longing could expose her entirely. And yet, she could not lie. I want freedom, she whispered. I want to choose my life for myself. Kalen's gaze softened, but his intensity remained. Freedom has a price, he said, and sometimes it is not given, it is taken. Over the next few days, Kalen began testing her, not in combat, though she was ready for that, but in ways more subtle and dangerous. He would send her to scout distant borders, observe strange occurrences in the forests, and report back with details only someone sharp and perceptive could catch. At first, Elara resented the tests. They were reminders of her vulnerability, of the risk she carried by simply existing. But soon, she began to see another side.
Kalen was not trying to break her. He was trying to understand her, to measure her courage and her heart.
One evening, after a long day of scouting, Kalen called her to the edge of a cliff overlooking the kingdom. The wind whipped around them, tugging at cloaks and hair alike. Below, the forest stretched like a dark sea, endless and mysterious. "You have done well," Kalen said, his voice carrying over the wind. "But courage is not just in action. It is in trust." "Will you trust me, Eloran?" Eloran's heart raced. Trust was dangerous. To trust Kalen could mean losing herself entirely. But there was something in the intensity of his gaze, the steady calm behind his power, that made her want to leap, even when every instinct screamed not to. I don't know, she admitted.
I've never trusted anyone like this before. Kalen's expression softened, and for a moment he seemed less like a king and more like a man. Then start small, he said.
Tell me who you truly are. Her throat tightened. 4 years of lies, of masks, of careful performance. It all came rushing back. And yet, she felt the pull of the unknown, the possibility that he might see her, truly see her, and not destroy her for it. Before she could answer, the wind shifted, carrying with it a strange, foreboding sound. A rustle in the trees, the snap of a branch where none should have been. Shadows moved at the edge of the cliff, shapes darker than the night around them. Kalen's eyes narrowed.
They are here again, he said, drawing his sword. Not random creatures.
Something more deliberate. Follow my lead. Elara's pulse surged, and she moved instinctively to his side. Her heart pounded not from fear alone, but from the proximity of the Alpha King, from the thrill of danger shared with someone who could match her courage step for step. Brr. The shadows emerged fully now, twisted forms that slithered and lunged. Elara fought with precision, her blade cutting through the dark shapes with a skill honed over years of secrecy. Aberration. Kaelin was a force of nature beside her, commanding, strong, and terrifyingly close. Every move, every strike, every glance between them was charged with tension that neither could ignore. Desper. At one point, a shadow lunged at her from the side, and Kaelin's hand shot out, gripping her arm with a strength that startled her. Burda. Their eyes met, and in that instant something unspoken passed between them. Acknowledgement, respect, and the faintest spark of something dangerous and tender. Aberration. When the shadows finally dissipated, leaving only the scent of burnt foliage and tension in the air, Elara sank to her knees, exhausted. Kaelin stood over her, his chest heaving slightly, his gaze fixed upon her as if he could see every secret she had ever held. Burrit.
You have courage, he said finally, voice low and steady. And something else, something I cannot name yet.
But I will learn it. And when I do... His words trailed off, a promise hanging between them like the fragile morning mist. Elara swallowed, her body trembling, not from fear, but from the closeness, from the unspoken understanding that her carefully guarded life was beginning to unravel. She wanted to run, to hide, to retreat into the safety of her old disguise, oration, and yet she could not move. Bray. Not from him, not from this moment, not from the strange, dangerous pull that seemed to connect them. Kyle unsheathed his sword and extended a hand. Come, he said. There is much we must do, and the night will not wait for hesitation.
Elara took his hand, her fingers brushing against his, and a shiver ran through her.
For the first time in 4 years, she felt the possibility of being seen, of being valued, of being more than the mask she had worn. And yet, even as she followed him, she knew the truth. The night was far from over, and her secret was still fragile. One wrong word, one misstep, and everything could be lost. The forest beyond Ashen Hollow was alive with shadows. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind, seemed amplified in the early night. Kaelin moved with careful precision, his cloak brushing against the undergrowth, his sword drawn and ready. Brr! Elara followed close, alert, her own blade steady in her hand. The attack had come faster than either of them expected. Brr! From the depths of the forest, creatures, neither fully human nor fully beast, emerged. Their eyes glowed with a strange, otherworldly light, and their movements were too quick, too coordinated to be random. Elara's heart raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. The training, the careful practice of years spent as Ellerin guided her movements. She struck with precision, parried with focus, and ducked beneath an unnatural claw that swiped too close to her shoulder. Kaelin was beside her at every moment, his presence both terrifying and reassuring. There was no hesitation in his movements, only strength and control. And yet, as they fought side by side, Elara felt something stir within her, a recognition, a bond forming not out of words but of shared struggle, of mirrored courage. Aberration. "Stay close!" Kaelin shouted over the noise of battle. His voice was sharp, commanding, but also carrying a thread of concern. Elara nodded, her pulse pounding. For a fleeting moment she allowed herself to trust him completely. Hooray. And in that instant a creature lunged at her from the shadows. She struck it down, but not before its claws grazed her cheek. Aberration. Pain flared, but she ignored it, focusing instead on the rhythm of the fight.
It was in that chaos that it happened, the moment she could no longer hide.
A massive shadow lunged from above, and Elara barely had time to roll to the side. Her cloak tore, and in the flash of moonlight her long hair spilled free, catching the silver light like a river. Brr. The creature recoiled, and Kalen's gaze fell upon her, not at the movement of her blade, but at her face. Time slowed. Barash. He froze, sword midair, his eyes widening. He had suspected deception, yes.
He had seen her skill and her courage, but this...
This was undeniable. The boy he had been observing, testing and watching, was a girl. Elara's chest tightened. Her secret, the one she had guarded for 4 years, was exposed in the middle of a forest at the edge of battle. She could feel her heart hammering against her ribs, fear and shame mingling in a storm that threatened to overwhelm her. Kalen's voice was low, almost a whisper, though it carried across the clearing. Elara! Her name on his lips, spoken without accusation, without anger, only recognition, made something inside her shiver. She expected rage, punishment, dismissal. She expected the world to shift against her. Instead, she felt aberration. And something else. Something dangerous and unfamiliar. Respect. Aberration. She began, but words failed her. Kalen's gaze softened, though it did not lose its intensity. You are more than I imagined, he said finally. And yet, you lied to me. Aberration. I had to, she whispered. If I had revealed myself, I would have been claimed. Brett. Or worse, I had to survive. Aberration. Kalen studied her silently, his expression unreadable. The wind stirred, tugging at their cloaks, carrying the scent of pine and fire and shadow. And then he did something unexpected. Aberration. He extended his hand. Stand with me, he said. Not as a boy, not as a secret. Stand with me as yourself. Elara hesitated, her instincts screaming to flee, to hide. Aberration. And yet, she took his hand. The creatures were not finished. Rest. Another wave surged from the shadows, their movements precise, intelligent, terrifying. Kalen drew her close, and together they moved as one. Their blades sang through the night air, cutting down the dark forms with a rhythm that only trust could produce. For the first time in years, Elara felt fully alive, not just surviving, but participating in something larger, something real. Bond between her and Kalen was electric, unspoken, forged in the fire of combat. And yet, amidst the adrenaline and danger, a thread of fear remained. One misstep, one moment of hesitation could undo everything. When the last of the shadows fell, the forest fell silent. Alara's arms ached, her chest heaved, and her cheeks bore the marks of battle. Kalen lowered his sword, his gaze never leaving hers.
You are extraordinary, he said, his voice softer now, almost gentle.
I see you, Elara, not Elarin. Aberration. Not the mask. You, brave. Tears threatened at the edges of her eyes, a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and the weight of exposure. For so long she had hidden, pretending to be someone she was not. Barash. And now, standing beside the man she had feared and been fascinated by, she felt a strange sense of freedom. Thank you, she whispered, voice trembling. For seeing me. Kalen's hand brushed her hair back from her face, a gesture both protective and intimate. I will always see you, he said. Aberration. But there is no time to linger. We are not safe yet, Beration.
They moved deeper into the forest, guided by the faint light of the moon and the trails of shadow left behind by the creatures.
The silence between them was heavy, charged with unspoken thoughts. Ilara felt the weight of Kaelin's gaze, the way it measured her, understood her, and acknowledged her strength. Berate. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel something more than fear. A connection. Barash. A fragile, growing bond that was as thrilling as it was dangerous. I need to know something, Kaelin said finally, breaking the silence, desperate. Why did you hide yourself so well? Why pretend to be a boy for 4 years? Ilara's throat tightened. Beration. The truth was painful, a wound she had kept hidden for too long. I could not. Beration.
I could not risk being claimed, she admitted. Not by him, not by anyone.
Bear, I wanted freedom. I wanted to live my life on my own terms. That is why I pretended, why I trained, why I fought in silence. Kaelin nodded, understanding flickering in his eyes. Beration. You are brave, he said, and clever. Beration. And yet, even bravery has its limits. Even cleverness must bow to danger. Ilara looked at him, the weight of his words sinking in. She had survived this long, but the battles ahead would be far more dangerous. Not only from creatures or rival factions, but from the delicate thread of trust that now connected her to Kaelin. As they reached a clearing, a soft light glimmered ahead. There, tied to a tree and guarded by a lone figure cloaked in shadows, was a prisoner, a message, perhaps, from those who had attacked the village. Ilara froze. Beration. She recognized the stance, the faint aura of magic surrounding the figure. It was one of the shadowed assassins, sent to test, provoke, or perhaps punish. Her mind raced. Every instinct screamed to fight, to protect, to survive. Kaelin stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of her. Stay behind me, he said, his voice low but firm. Beration. You have strength. But now is not the time to reveal it. She had fought beside him, risked herself in battle, and revealed her secret. Beration. Yet here, now, she felt the old tension return, the fragility of her life, the danger of exposure, and the constant pressure of surviving in a world that could be unforgiving. But she did not move away. She did not hide. She would stand, as Kaelin had asked, as herself. The figure in the shadows shifted, and a cold wind swept through the clearing. Kaelin's hand tightened around his sword, and Ilara readied herself. Beration. Every muscle, every thought, every heartbeat was attuned to the danger ahead. And then, a voice, a whisper, soft but unmistakable, rose from the shadows. Beresh. Ilara. Her heart froze. The name, spoken with familiarity, with intent, with recognition, was not Kaelin's. It belonged to someone she thought she had left behind, someone who had marked her life long before the Alpha King had noticed her. She took a step forward, Kaelin beside her, blade ready. Beration. Who's there? She demanded, though her voice quivered. The figure emerged slowly from the darkness, face hidden beneath a hood. Beration. You cannot hide from your past, the voice said. Not from me. Not from him. Not from what you truly are. Ilara felt the ground shift beneath her. Her secret, once exposed to Kaelin, was now threatened by someone from her past, someone who could undo everything she had fought to protect. Kaelin's gaze met hers, sharp and commanding. Stand firm, he said, Bert. We face this together. Elara nodded, gripping her sword tighter. She had revealed herself to Kalen, and he had accepted her. But now the real test loomed. Could they survive the past that had come to claim her, and the shadows that would not let them go?
The forest was silent now, but the tension hung in the air like a storm waiting to break.
Shadows lingered in the corners of the clearing, and the figure from Alara's past stood motionless beneath the trees, cloaked in darkness. Kalen stepped forward, his sword steady, his presence unwavering. Elara followed, her own blade drawn, heart pounding with fear and determination. "You've grown bold," the figure said, voice sharp and cold. 4 years hiding, and yet here you are. Desk. Elara swallowed. She knew this person well, though she had hoped never to meet them again. This was the one who had marked her, chased her, and forced her into secrecy all those years. And now they stood before her again, threatening not only her life, but the fragile trust she had built with Kalen. "I am no longer hiding," she said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "I am who I am." Kalen's eyes met hers, sharp, steady, protective. "And I will not let them harm you," he said. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The figure laughed, a sound that sent shivers down Elara's spine.
Together, they sneered. "You are strong, girl, but not enough."
Not even with him. Elara's grip on her sword tightened. "Watch me," she said, and stepped forward. The battle began with a suddenness that threw them into chaos. The figure moved like a shadow, striking with unnatural speed, dodging and weaving around their blades. Kalen engaged first, his strikes powerful, precise and controlled. Her instincts guiding her, every movement a reflection of years of survival and training. They fought not only with steel, but with the strength of their bond. Every glance, every subtle shift in position, every shared understanding allowed them to anticipate each other's moves. Kalen was her shield, and she was his edge. Together, they were unstoppable, but the figure was relentless. They seemed to anticipate every strategy, countering with a precision that unnerved even Kalen. It became clear that brute strength alone would not win this fight. They needed strategy, cunning, and trust. The kind of trust only forged in fire and battle. "Elara!" Kalen shouted, ducking under a strike that could have ended him. "Lead the next move. I will follow you." This was the first time Kalen had placed such complete trust in her judgment. She felt a surge of power, not from magic, not from her sword, but from the knowledge that she was seen, valued, and trusted. Together, she whispered to herself, and to Kalen, and then made her move.
Elara feinted to the left, drawing the figure's attention, and then pivoted, slashing with precision at their flank.
Kalen followed immediately, striking from the opposite side. The figure faltered, just enough. That single moment shifted the tide. The shadows surrounding them wavered, their magic dissipating under the combined force of Kalen and Alara's unity. The figure's eyes widened, and for a fleeting second they were human again, not an unstoppable force, but a person vulnerable to skill, courage, and trust. Elara pressed forward, her sword flashing, her movements fluid and confident. "This ends now," she said, voice ringing with authority and resolve.
Kalen's presence beside her was steady, his sword striking in perfect rhythm with hers.
"We end this together," he said. The final strike was a blur. The figure fell to the ground, defeated but alive. Their hood fell back, revealing a face familiar yet distorted by years of resentment and bitterness. Ilara stepped back, breathing heavily, sword lowered, heart still racing. Kaelin's hand rested briefly on her shoulder. Are you hurt? He asked, voice low, concern clear in his tone. Ilara shook her head. No. Only exhausted. She looked at him, a mixture of relief, admiration, and something deeper shining in her eyes.
Thank you for trusting me.
Kaelin's expression softened, a rare moment of vulnerability breaking through the mask of the Alpha King.
It was always you, he said.
I only needed to see it, to know who you truly were. The forest slowly returned to stillness. The shadows were gone, the figures subdued, but the night had left its mark on both of them, not in wounds alone, but in understanding. They had survived together, fought together, and for the first time faced danger without masks, without secrets. Ilara felt something she had never allowed herself to feel before, a sense of belonging, not as Ellerin, the boy hiding in the shadows, not as a survivor of fear and secrecy, but as herself, recognized, seen, and valued. Kaelin turned to her, his eyes reflecting the moonlight and something far deeper, something she had only glimpsed before. Admiration, respect, and the faintest trace of something dangerous and tender. You have changed me, he said, voice low but steady. Not just in battle, but in life. You remind me that power is not only strength, it is choice, and mercy, and courage.
Elara felt warmth flood her chest. And you have shown me, she said, that I can be more than my fears.
That I can be seen without losing myself. Their eyes met, and in that moment words were unnecessary. They did not speak of love, not yet, but the connection was undeniable. It was a bond forged in fire, in shared struggle, and in trust that had never existed before. Days passed as they returned to the village. Ashen Hollow was still scarred, but hope had returned. Villagers cautiously began to rebuild, encouraged by the courage of the young warrior and the Alpha King who had fought alongside her. Ilara moved among them freely now, no longer hiding as Ilaran. Children ran past her, laughing, and she smiled genuinely for the first time in years. Kaelin observed her quietly, pride and something softer shining in his eyes.
Your people admire you, he said one evening, as they stood at the edge of the village, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson.
They survived, Ilara replied. And so did we. She hesitated, then added softly, I could not have done this without you. Kyla's gaze lingered on her. And I without you.
We are stronger together than apart. Remember that.
The bond between them had grown, tempered by fire, loyalty, and courage. Yet even as peace settled over Ashen Hollow, the memory of shadows and danger remained, a reminder that the world beyond the village was vast, unpredictable. But for the first time, Ilara felt ready. She was no longer hiding. She was no longer alone, and beside her, Kaelin, the Alpha King, fierce, commanding, and now a partner in trust and struggle, stood ready to face whatever came next. Weeks passed. The village thrived under their protection, and Ilara began to train others, teaching them not only the art of combat, but the courage to face fear, the wisdom to make choices, and the strength to stand for themselves. Colin watched her with quiet pride, occasionally joining her in training, their movements synchronized as though they were one. Their bond deepened, not in haste, not in words alone, but in shared glances, in the small touches of trust, in moments of quiet understanding. Each night, when the moon rose high, they would walk to the edge of the forest, speaking softly, laughing, sharing stories of past struggles and building dreams for the future. One night, as the stars shimmered above, Shelley stopped. "Alara," he said, voice carrying both authority and warmth. "You have changed everything, not only for yourself, but for me, for this kingdom, for the people who look to us."
You have brought hope where there was only fear. Elara's heart swelled.
"And you," she said, "have given me trust, safety, and a reason to believe that courage can be more than survival, that it can be love too." Kaelin's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "Then we choose it," he said. "Together." Elara smiled, a radiant, fearless smile, and squeezed his hand. Together. The night air was calm, the village quiet, and the stars above bore witness to a bond forged in shadow and fire, now tempered in light. They had faced danger, deception, and fear, and had come through stronger, united, and ready to face whatever the world might throw at them. In that moment, there was no need for more words. Their story had reached a turning point, not the end, but a new beginning, one of trust, courage, and love, earned through struggle and choice. And though the kingdom beyond the forest still held mysteries, threats, and shadows, Alara and Kaelin would face them together. No longer master and secret warrior, no longer hidden and hunted, they were equals, bound not only by circumstance, but by respect, admiration, and the unspoken promise of a future forged in courage. The moonlight bathed them in silver, the forest whispered softly, and for the first time in years, Elara allowed herself to breathe fully, without fear. The Alpha King had found her, but he had not claimed her. He had chosen her as a partner, as an equal, and as someone to trust. And in that choice, she found freedom.